Diane Ashford taught 4th grade for 31 years in the same school district, the kind of teacher former students still recognized at the grocery store decades later, still called Mrs. A out of habit, still occasionally mailed a thank you card 20 years after long division had stopped mattering to either of them. She retired the spring after her husband Frank passed, 2 years ago now, in a house that had gotten a lot quieter than either of them had ever planned for it to be. Frank used to do the crossword out loud at breakfast, reading her the clues he was stuck on. She still bought the newspaper most Sundays, out of habit, and left it folded on his side of the table longer than she'd ever admit to anyone. Her daughter Beth called every Sunday from Denver, always at 6, always a little rushed between her own kids' bedtimes. Diane didn't mind. She filled the rest of the week with a garden she'd never had time for during the school year, a book club that met every other Thursday, and a Facebook account she mostly used to see photos of her grandkids growing up 2 states away, faster than she liked. That's where Barbara found her, or where Diane found Barbara. She was never entirely sure which, looking back. A friend request from a woman who claimed they'd met at a teaching conference in Sacramento in the 90s, a face that seemed familiar in the vague way conference faces always do after 30 years, a handful of mutual friends that made the whole thing feel already vouched for. Diane accepted. Most people would have. Barbara was warm without being pushy, funny in a way that reminded Diane of her old department chair. They messaged most days. Nothing important, mostly. Grandkids, Gardens, a show they were both watching, a recipe Barbara swore by for the exact soup Diane had been trying to get right for years. Weeks passed before money ever came up at all, and even then it was small, almost an aside, Barbara mentioning she'd finally started paying more attention to her retirement account, working with a really sharp guy who'd gotten her portfolio growing faster than she'd ever managed on her own. She didn't push. She barely mentioned it again for 2 more weeks. That patience is the part almost nobody expects. Investment fraud, the fastest growing and most costly kind of scam targeting older Americans, responsible for more elder fraud losses last year than any other category combined, well over $3 billion from seniors alone, rarely opens with urgency. Researchers who study it call the method pig butchering, a phrase describing exactly what it sounds like, fattening the relationship for months before anything is ever asked for. The average victim over 60 loses close to $40,000, and the ones who lose far more, like Diane eventually would, are rarely the ones who got rushed. They're the ones who got, patiently, believed. The FBI's own data on early intervention cases found that more than 3 in 4 victims had no idea anything was wrong the first time investigators reached out to warn them. Diane put in $2,000 first, mostly out of curiosity, onto a trading app Barbara walked her through over a video call, patient with every wrong click the way Diane used to be patient with a kid stuck on long division. The app showed growth within days. Small, believable growth, 11% in the first month, the kind of number that feels earned rather than impossible, with a clean, professional-looking dashboard, real-time charts ticking upward, everything a legitimate brokerage app would show, because that was, deliberately, the entire point of how it had been built. She told Beth about it on a Sunday call, expecting excitement, the way you tell your kid about a good thing happening to you for once instead of the other way around. She got silence instead, and then a careful, "Mom, can I look at the site with you sometime? Just so I understand it." Diane changed the subject, mentioned the grandkids instead, hung up 12 minutes earlier than usual. She loved her daughter, but Beth had never once, in 30 years, trusted her mother's judgment about anything without a follow-up question, and Diane was tired, that particular Sunday, of being the one who always needed checking on, the one who needed help instead of the one who occasionally got to have something good happen on her own. By the 4th month, the account showed a balance past $30,000. Diane put in more. then more again, twice, each time smaller and easier than the last, the way every subsequent decision in situations like hers always is, once the first one already felt safe. Barbara introduced her, eventually, to the sharp guy himself, over video, younger than Diane expected, patient with her questions the way a good financial advisor should be, careful never once to rush her, careful to let her be the one who suggested increasing the investment rather than ever asking for it directly. By the time she moved the bulk of Frank's life insurance payout into the platform, the running total on her screen read just north of $200,000, a number that looked, and felt, exactly like the retirement 31 years of teaching had actually earned her. She tried to withdraw $11,000 in March, for a bathroom renovation she'd been putting off since Frank got sick, the one project she'd promised herself as a small reward for how far she'd come in 2 years. The platform returned an error. She refreshed the page 4 times before she let herself believe it wasn't just her phone being slow. A message followed within the hour, from customer support, polite and specific, an international tax clearance fee was required before any withdrawal could process, $4,000, refundable once the transfer completed. Diane sat with her phone in her hand for a long time before she paid it, in the same kitchen chair Frank used to do the crossword in, the newspaper still folded on his side of the table. She told herself it was standard. She told herself Barbara had mentioned something similar once, months back, almost in passing, the kind of detail that only becomes a warning sign in hindsight, that only sounds like the beginning of the end once you already know how the story finishes. She paid the $4,000. The withdrawal still didn't process. A second fee appeared, larger, described as a liquidity release, and this is the exact moment where the choice stopped being simple for Diane, the way it never actually is for anyone living inside it in real time. Paying meant admitting, at least to herself, how much she'd already put in, that the $200,000 sitting on that screen might already be gone, and that every fee since was just good money chasing bad. Not paying meant admitting the same thing, immediately, with no chance left to be wrong about it, no version of the story left where Frank's life insurance had gone somewhere safe. Diane spent 3 days telling almost no one, running the 2 outcomes over and over at 2 in the morning, looking for a version where both weren't true at once. She actually opened her banking app to send the second fee twice, and closed it both times without finishing. The third time, she thought about the bathroom renovation, the one small thing she'd let herself want, and the possibility that admitting it now was the only way any part of it survived at all, and she sent it. $22,000 this time. Her hand was shaking enough that she mistyped the confirmation code once before it went through. The withdrawal still didn't process. A third message arrived within the day. She called Beth on a Tuesday, not a Sunday, which alone told Beth something was wrong before Diane said a word. Diane got about 4 sentences into the explanation before she couldn't finish the rest of it out loud, and Beth, 1,200 miles away, just said, "I'm booking a flight," and didn't ask a single follow-up question, the same daughter who'd always asked too many, finally asking none at all when it actually mattered. They reported it together that same week, to the bank, to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, to the platform itself, which had already stopped answering by then. Beth sat next to her mother at the kitchen table, the same one Frank used to do his crossword at, filling out form after form while Diane read numbers off statements in a voice that kept threatening to give out halfway through a sentence. A fraud investigator told them plainly what the numbers already suggested. Money moved into accounts like this one is typically routed through several layers within hours, often overseas, and recovery, when it happens at all, happens for a small fraction of victims, usually only a portion of what was actually taken. Diane got back $11,000 of the roughly $226,000 she'd sent across the platform, and both fees combined. Barbara's account, and the profile of the man on the video calls Barbara had eventually introduced her to directly, Both disappeared the same week Diane stopped responding, along with every message the two of them had ever exchanged. 7 months of grandkids and gardens and a soup recipe, gone in the same hour as the money. The investigator said something Diane repeated to Beth so many times afterward it started to sound like something she'd always known, instead of something she'd had to learn at 62. This wasn't about you being careless. It was built, patiently, by people who do this professionally, specifically so it wouldn't feel like a scam until it was already finished being one. Loneliness isn't a character flaw they found in you. It's the raw material they're trained to look for, the same way a good con always starts by finding out what a person is actually missing. Diane sold the house 8 months later. Smaller place now, closer to Beth, a decision that had nothing to do with wanting to move and everything to do with the number that was left. She kept the newspaper habit. She still leaves it folded on the side of whatever table stands in for Frank's spot now, out of habit more than grief at this point, though some Sundays it's still both. She still gardens. She still does book club, though she's quieter in it than she used to be, and one of the other members, a retired accountant named Judith, sits closer to her now than she used to, without either of them ever quite naming why. She checks now, before anything, the way she never used to. A real license number, verified against a regulator's public database before a single dollar moves. A second person in the room, always Beth, or Judith, or anyone, before she trusts a feeling instead of a fact. She talks about it openly now, at book club, at church, to anyone who'll sit still long enough, not out of guilt, but because she's noticed how many people her age go quiet the second she starts, the particular quiet of someone doing their own math in their head for the first time. It took Barbara 7 months to become someone Diane trusted completely, and 11 days, once the fee started, to take back every year those 7 months had ever felt like they were building. 31 years to earn it. 7 months to lose it. And for almost every one of those months, it never once felt like losing at all.